My grandson whispered, "Look under the table at my son's wedding." I found the envelope meant for his mistress. The morning of my son's wedding dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect September day that wedding planners dream about and photographers charge extra for. I stood at the window of my hotel room, adjusting my tie for the third time, and watching the grounds crew at Riverside Manor put the finishing touches on the outdoor ceremony setup below. At 62, I'd attended enough weddings to know that this one was special, not just because it was my son Marcus's big day, but because of how long it had taken him to get here. At 35, Marcus had finally found someone who could match his intelligence, share his ambitions, and apparently convince him to stop treating commitment like a communicable disease he needed to avoid at all costs. Sarah Chen was everything I'd hoped my son would find in a partner: brilliant, kind, successful in her own right as a pediatric surgeon, and somehow patient enough to deal with Marcus's workaholic tendencies and his lifelong inability to express emotions without turning it into a joke. They'd been together for 3 years, living together for 2, and engaged for 8 months that had passed in a whirlwind of venue bookings, menu tastings, and the kind of detailed planning that made my late wife Helen's organizational skills look amateur by comparison. "She's perfect for him, Robert," Helen had whispered to me during one of our last conversations before the cancer finally took her 2 years ago. "Sarah's going to keep him grounded while still letting him reach for the stars. That's exactly what our boy needs." Helen had been right about most things in our 38 years of marriage, and I had no reason to doubt her judgment about this. Sarah brought out the best in Marcus, made him more thoughtful, more present, more willing to prioritize relationships alongside his demanding career as a financial advisor. For the first time in years, my son seemed genuinely happy rather than just successfully busy. The wedding was set to be a small affair by today's standards. 60 guests, mostly family and close friends, with a ceremony in the manor's rose garden, followed by dinner and dancing in the converted barn that served as the reception hall. Marcus and Sarah had insisted on keeping things intimate, which I appreciated both for the warmer atmosphere and for the more manageable expense they'd insisted on shouldering themselves, despite my offers to contribute. I made my way downstairs to the lobby, where other early-rising wedding guests were gathering over coffee and Danish pastries. My brother Tom was there with his wife Janet. My cousin Pete had driven up from Philadelphia, and several of Marcus's college friends were engaged in the kind of animated conversation that suggested they'd already been sampling the complimentary champagne the hotel provided for wedding parties. "Robert, there's the father of the groom," Tom called out, raising his coffee cup in a mock toast. "How are you holding up on the big day?" "Better than I expected," I admitted, accepting a cup of coffee from the hotel attendant. "I keep waiting for the nervous breakdown that everyone warns you about when your last child gets married, but so far I'm just excited for them." "That's because you raised a good one," Janet said, giving me the kind of warm smile that had made her my favorite sister-in-law for the past 40 years. "Marcus is lucky to have found Sarah, but she's lucky too. He's got his father's integrity and his mother's heart, Helen's heart." I felt the familiar pang of grief that still caught me off guard sometimes, even 2 years after her death. Helen should have been here for this day. She should have been fussing over flower arrangements and crying during the ceremony and embarrassing Marcus with stories about his childhood during the reception toasts. She would have loved seeing this day, I said quietly. "She is seeing it," Janet replied, squeezing my arm, "just from the best seat in the house." An hour before the ceremony was scheduled to begin, I went looking for Marcus to check on his pre-wedding nerves and maybe steal a few minutes of father-son time before he officially became someone's husband. I found him in the manor's library, which the wedding coordinator had designated as the groom's preparation room, adjusting his bow tie in front of an antique mirror while his best man, Luke, fussed with his boutonniere. "Dad, perfect timing. Can you help me with this tie? My hands are shaking too much to get it right." I was surprised by the admission. Marcus had always been unflappable under pressure, the kind of person who thrived on high-stakes situations and deadlines, but his hands were indeed trembling slightly as I took over the bow tie duties, a detail that made me smile with paternal fondness. "Nervous, terrified," Marcus admitted with a laugh. "Not about marrying Sarah. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, but about standing up in front of everyone and trying to say words that explain how I feel about her without sounding like a complete idiot. Your vows are going to be perfect, son. They're going to be honest, and that's all that matters. Did you feel this way when you married Mum?" "I felt like I was about to throw up for 3 straight hours," I said, finishing with his tie. "But the moment I saw your mother walking down the aisle, everything else just disappeared. All that mattered was her and the promises we were about to make to each other." Marcus nodded, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "That's what I'm hoping for. Trust me, it'll happen. And Marcus, your mother would be so proud of the man you've become and the woman you've chosen to share your life with." "Thanks, Dad. That means everything to me." As guests began taking their seats for the ceremony, I made my way to the rose garden, where white chairs were arranged in neat rows facing an elegant archway covered in climbing roses and ivy. The afternoon sun filtered through the oak trees that bordered the garden, creating the kind of dappled light that would make every wedding photo look like something from a fairy tale. I took my seat in the front row, saving the space beside me that Helen should have occupied, and watched as the rest of the guests settled into their chairs. Sarah's family filled the left side of the aisle, her parents, who had flown in from California, her sister and brother-in-law with their twin daughters, who would serve as flower girls, various aunts and uncles I'd met during the engagement period, but whose names I was still struggling to remember. On Marcus's side, our family was smaller but no less enthusiastic. Tom and Janet, Pete and his wife Maria, a handful of cousins and their spouses, and several of Marcus's longtime friends who had become honorary family over the years. It was then that I noticed something that made me pause. Sitting 3 rows behind me, almost hidden among a group of Marcus's work colleagues, was my 10-year-old grandson Tyler, Marcus's nephew, the son of my daughter Lisa, who lived in Portland and had been unable to attend due to her husband's recent surgery. But Tyler wasn't supposed to be here. Lisa had told me weeks ago that she couldn't make the trip, and there was no way she would have sent Tyler alone to a wedding across the country. Yet there he was, wearing a navy suit I'd never seen before, his sandy hair neatly combed, looking uncomfortable but determined among the adults surrounding him. I caught Tyler's eye and gave him a questioning look, mouthing, "What are you doing here?" But instead of answering, he just stared at me with an expression I'd never seen on his face before, something that looked like fear mixed with desperate urgency. The string quartet began playing the processional, and my attention turned to the back of the garden where the wedding party was preparing to make their entrance. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that Tyler's unexpected presence was connected to something I didn't understand. The ceremony proceeded beautifully. Sarah looked radiant in her simple but elegant dress, walking down the aisle with her father while the quartet played Pachelbel's canon. Marcus's face when he saw her was everything I'd hoped for, pure joy and love and amazement that this remarkable woman had chosen to spend her life with him. The officiant, a family friend of Sarah's who had gotten ordained specifically for this wedding, spoke about love and commitment and the journey that had brought Marcus and Sarah to this moment. The vows they exchanged were personal and heartfelt, bringing tears to more than a few eyes in the assembled crowd. But throughout the ceremony, I found my attention drifting to Tyler, who continued to stare at me with that same urgent expression. Every time I tried to focus on the proceedings, I felt his eyes on me, and when I turned to look at him, he would mouth something I couldn't understand from that distance. It wasn't until the ceremony was over and guests were moving from the garden to the cocktail hour on the manor's terrace that Tyler finally made his move. As I was chatting with Sarah's parents about how beautiful the ceremony had been, I felt a small hand tug at my jacket sleeve. "Grandpa!" Tyler's voice was barely above a whisper, and when I looked down at him, I could see that his face was pale and his eyes were wide with anxiety. "Tyler, sweetheart, what are you doing here? How did you get here?" "Mum sent me," he said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening to our conversation. "She said I had to come, that it was really important." "Important how, Tyler? What's going on?" "I can't tell you here," he whispered, his voice shaking slightly. "Too many people. But Grandpa, I need you to do something for me, okay?" "What is it, buddy?" Tyler looked around again, then stood on his tiptoes to bring his mouth closer to my ear. What he whispered next made my blood run cold and set in motion a series of events that would change everything about this perfect wedding day. "During dinner, when everyone is sitting down, I need you to look under the table where Dad is sitting. There's something there you need to see." Dad. Tyler was talking about Marcus, his uncle, but he'd always called him Uncle Marcus, never Dad. And the way he said it with such careful precision made it clear that this wasn't a slip of the tongue. "Tyler, what do you mean? What's under the table?" "I can't tell you now, but Grandpa, it's really important. Mom made me promise to make sure you found it. She said you'd know what to do." Before I could ask any more questions, Tyler melted back into the crowd of guests, leaving me standing on the terrace with a glass of champagne in my hand and a growing sense of dread in the pit of my stomach. Lisa had sent Tyler to the wedding with a mission. Something was hidden under the table where Marcus would be sitting during dinner. Something that Lisa thought I needed to see. Something important enough to send her 10-year-old son across the country to ensure I found it. I tried to push the worry aside and focus on the celebration. This was Marcus's wedding day, a day of joy and new beginnings. Whatever Tyler was talking about could surely wait until after the reception, until after the happy couple had driven away to begin their honeymoon and their new life together. But as the cocktail hour progressed, and we moved into the reception hall for dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Tyler stayed close to me throughout the evening, but whenever I tried to engage him in conversation about why he was there or what he'd meant about looking under the table, he would just shake his head and say, "After dinner, Grandpa. I'll explain everything after dinner." The reception hall was beautifully decorated, with round tables covered in white linens and centerpieces of roses and candles. Marcus and Sarah were seated at a sweetheart table at the front of the room, just the two of them, glowing with happiness as they accepted congratulations from guests who stopped by throughout the evening. I was seated at a table with Tom and Janet and a few of Marcus's old friends, close enough to the head table to keep an eye on the happy couple, but far enough away to give them privacy for their intimate conversations. Tyler had somehow managed to get himself seated at our table as well, though I still hadn't figured out how he'd managed that, or who had been responsible for his travel arrangements. As the dinner service began and guests settled into their seats, Tyler leaned over and whispered to me again, "Now, Grandpa, while everyone is eating and not paying attention, go look under their table." "Tyler, I can't just crawl around on the floor during dinner. People will think I've lost my mind." "Drop your napkin," he said, with the kind of matter-of-fact problem-solving that reminded me he was his mother's son. "Pretend it blew away or something. Just get close enough to see under their table." I looked at my grandson, this child who had somehow become burdened with adult secrets and responsibilities, and made a decision. If Tyler had traveled across the country to deliver a message from Lisa, if whatever was under that table was important enough to risk disrupting Marcus's wedding day, then I needed to find out what it was. I waited until the salad course had been served, and most guests were focused on their food and conversation. Then I accidentally knocked my napkin to the floor, letting it drift in the direction of Marcus and Sarah's table. "Oops," I said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "Clumsy me." I bent down to retrieve the napkin, using the motion as cover to peer under the sweetheart table where Marcus and Sarah were sitting. At first I didn't see anything unusual, just the standard table legs, some electrical cords for the DJ equipment, and a few dropped flower petals from the centerpieces. But then, taped to the underside of the table directly beneath Marcus's chair, I saw it, a white envelope sealed with something written on the front in handwriting I didn't recognize. I couldn't read the writing from where I was positioned, but I could see enough to know that this was what Tyler had wanted me to find. I straightened up, napkin in hand, my mind racing with questions and possibilities. What was in that envelope? Who had put it there? And why had Lisa sent Tyler to make sure I found it? The rest of dinner passed in a blur. I made appropriate conversation with the other guests at my table, smiled and applauded during the toasts, and watched Marcus and Sarah feed each other bites of wedding cake with the kind of playful affection that made everyone in the room smile. But all I could think about was that envelope, hidden beneath their table, like a ticking bomb waiting to explode. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, I found myself faced with an impossible choice. I could pretend I'd never seen the envelope, let Marcus and Sarah drive away to their honeymoon in blissful ignorance of whatever secret someone had felt compelled to share on their wedding day, or I could find a way to retrieve that envelope and discover what truth was so important that it couldn't wait until after the celebration was over. Tyler appeared at my side as I wrestled with this decision, his small hand slipping into mine. "Did you see it, Grandpa?" "I saw it." "Tyler, do you know what's in that envelope?" "No," he said quietly. "But Mom does, and she said it was something you needed to know about Uncle Marcus before it was too late." Before it was too late. Those words echoed in my head as I watched my son dance with his new bride, both of them laughing at something Sarah had whispered in his ear. Whatever was in that envelope, whatever truth Lisa had sent Tyler to reveal, it was about to turn this perfect wedding day into something else entirely, and I was the only one who could decide whether to let sleeping secrets lie or to uncover a truth that might destroy everything my son thought he'd just gained. The last guests were saying their goodbyes when I made my decision. Marcus and Sarah were at the far end of the reception hall, thanking the catering staff and collecting cards from the gift table, their faces glowing with the exhausted happiness that comes at the end of a perfect wedding day. The DJ was packing up his equipment and the venue coordinator was directing the cleanup crew, but the sweetheart table where they'd sat during dinner remained untouched. "Tyler," I whispered to my grandson, who had stayed glued to my side throughout the evening, "I need you to create a distraction. Can you go ask your Uncle Marcus about something? Anything that will keep him and Sarah busy for a few minutes. Tyler nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of what we were about to do. He walked across the room with the determined stride of a child on a mission, tapping Marcus on the shoulder and launching into what appeared to be an elaborate story about his flight to the wedding. I watched as Marcus knelt down to Tyler's level, his attention completely focused on his nephew's animated explanation. This was my chance. I moved quickly to the sweetheart table, dropping to one knee as if I were looking for a dropped contact lens. My fingers found the envelope immediately. It was larger than I'd initially thought, thick with contents and sealed with the kind of tape that suggested someone had wanted to make sure it stayed in place. I peeled it away from the table's underside, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone in the room could hear it. The envelope was addressed in careful block letters for Claudia Martinez. Deliver after the ceremony, Claudia Martinez. I didn't recognize the name, but the instruction was clear. This envelope was meant for someone who wasn't here, someone who was supposed to receive it after Marcus's wedding was over, someone who clearly knew about the wedding and had arranged for this delivery method. I slipped the envelope into my jacket pocket and stood up, trying to look casual as I rejoined the small group of remaining guests. Tyler caught my eye from across the room and gave me the slightest nod before returning his attention to Marcus, who was now showing him photos on his phone of the honeymoon destination in Tuscany. Dad, Sarah appeared at my elbow, still radiant despite the long day. Thank you so much for everything today. The wedding was more beautiful than I ever imagined it could be. It was perfect, sweetheart. You and Marcus looked so happy up there. We are happy, she said, her voice soft with emotion. I know it sounds cliché, but I really do feel like the luckiest woman in the world. The envelope in my pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Here was Sarah, glowing with love and contentment, talking about how lucky she felt on what might be the last day she would feel that way about her new husband. Sarah, you deserve all the happiness in the world, I said, and meant it completely. Whatever was in that envelope, whatever truth someone wanted Claudia Martinez to know, Sarah Chen Patterson deserved better than to have her wedding day be the beginning of a lie. 20 minutes later, Marcus and Sarah climbed into the decorated car that would take them to their hotel before their flight to Italy the next morning. The reception hall was empty, except for the cleanup crew. Tyler and I were alone in my hotel room, and the envelope sat unopened on the small table by the window. Grandpa! Tyler was sitting on the edge of the bed, his wedding suit wrinkled and his bow tie hanging loose around his neck. Are you going to open it? I don't know, buddy. Once I read what's inside, I can't unread it. And if it's something bad about your Uncle Marcus, it might change everything. Mom said it would change everything anyway. She said that's why you needed to see it before the wedding was over. Tyler, how did you get here, really? And how did your mum know about this envelope? For the first time all day, Tyler looked like the 10-year-old he was, uncertain and a little scared. Mom got a phone call 2 days ago from a lady named Claudia. She was crying and said she needed to tell someone about Uncle Marcus, but she couldn't do it herself because it would ruin too many lives. She said she was going to leave a letter at the wedding for someone to find, but then she found out that Mom was Uncle Marcus's sister and called her instead. What did this Claudia tell your mum? I don't know all of it, but Mom started crying too, and then she started making phone calls to airlines and hotels. She told Dad she had to send me here, that it was a family emergency, and someone needed to make sure you got that letter. A family emergency. Lisa had spent thousands of dollars to fly her 10-year-old son across the country, alone, to deliver a message from a woman I'd never heard of, about secrets I didn't want to know. Tyler, did your mum say anything else about what was in the letter? Just that it was something that would help Aunt Sarah before it was too late to help her. Help Sarah, not hurt Marcus. Not destroy the family, but help Sarah. That shifted my perspective in a way that made the decision easier, or at least less selfish. This wasn't about protecting my son from consequences he might have earned. This was about protecting Sarah from deception she didn't deserve. I picked up the envelope and carefully opened it, aware that Tyler was watching my every move with the intensity of someone who understood that whatever happened next would change everything. Inside were 3 items: a handwritten letter, a printed email chain, and a set of photographs that made my stomach drop when I saw them. The letter was written in the same careful block letters as the envelope's address. To the family of Marcus Patterson. My name is Claudia Martinez, and I have been having an affair with Marcus for the past 18 months. I know that he is getting married today to a woman named Sarah, and I know that I should have ended our relationship before it got to this point, but I love him. And I believed him when he said he was going to call off the wedding. Yesterday, Marcus told me that he has decided to go through with the marriage after all. He said that Sarah's career and her family's money make her a better choice for his future than I could ever be. He said that our relationship has been fun, but that it was always going to be temporary. I am not writing this letter to break up his marriage or to cause drama for your family. I am writing it because Sarah deserves to know the truth about who she is marrying. She deserves to know that Marcus has been telling me he loves me while making wedding plans with her. She deserves to know that he has been planning to continue our relationship after the wedding, keeping me as his mistress while she thinks she has a faithful husband. I have attached copies of emails and text messages Marcus sent me as recently as this week, including ones where he describes his wedding plans as going through the motions and promises that nothing will change between us after he is married. I have also included photographs that he sent me during his bachelor party last month, along with messages about how much he wished I was there instead of celebrating his upcoming wedding. I cannot bring myself to attend the wedding or to confront Marcus and Sarah directly, but I cannot live with myself if I don't make sure that someone in your family knows the truth. Sarah seems like a wonderful person who deserves better than to start her marriage based on lies. Please do whatever you think is best with this information. I am moving to another city next week and will not be contacting Marcus again, but I needed to clear my conscience before I started my new life. Sincerely, Claudia Martinez. I set the letter down with shaking hands and looked at Tyler, whose face was pale but determined. Did you know what was in here, buddy? Not exactly. But Mom said it was proof that Uncle Marcus was doing something really bad to Aunt Sarah and that someone needed to help her. The email chain was worse than the letter. Dozens of messages between Marcus and Claudia, some from as recently as 3 days ago. Messages where Marcus complained about wedding stress and called Sarah high maintenance. Messages where he talked about their honeymoon as something he had to get through before he could see Claudia again. Messages where he detailed sexual encounters with Claudia while simultaneously texting Sarah about how much he loved her. But it was the photographs that made me feel physically sick. Pictures of Marcus at his bachelor party, but not the harmless celebration I'd been told about. Pictures of him with Claudia in what was clearly a hotel room, both of them naked, with timestamps showing they were taken the same weekend Sarah had been organizing the final wedding details. I closed my eyes and tried to process what I'd just learned. My son, who had stood in front of 60 guests just hours ago and promised to love and cherish Sarah for the rest of his life, had been lying to her for months. He'd been planning to continue his affair after the wedding, to turn Sarah into an unknowing participant in his deception. Grandpa, what are you going to do? That was the question I'd been dreading. What was I going to do with this information? Marcus and Sarah were already on their way to their honeymoon. The marriage certificate had been signed, the vows had been spoken, the celebration was over. They were legally married now, and I was sitting in a hotel room with evidence that the entire foundation of their marriage was built on lies. I could destroy the evidence and pretend I'd never seen it. I could protect my son and let Sarah discover the truth about her husband on her own, sometime in the future when it might hurt less or when she was better prepared to deal with it. Or I could find a way to tell Sarah what I'd learned, knowing that it would destroy her happiness but potentially save her from years of deception and betrayal. The decision became clearer when I thought about Helen, about what she would have done in my position. Helen, who had always believed that honesty was the foundation of every relationship worth having. Helen, who had taught me that protecting people from the truth was often just another way of enabling the people who were hurting them. Tyler, I said, reaching for my phone, I need to make some calls. Can you get ready for bed while I figure this out? Are you going to tell Aunt Sarah? I'm going to try to do what's right. But buddy, this is going to be really hard for everyone in our family. Are you prepared for that? Tyler nodded solemnly. Mom said families have to tell the truth to each other even when it's scary. Lisa was right. Families did have to tell the truth to each other, even when, especially when, it was scary. I waited until Tyler was asleep before making the call I'd been dreading. Sarah's phone went straight to voicemail, which made sense given that she and Marcus were probably asleep after their long wedding day. But I knew I couldn't wait until they were in Italy to have this conversation. Some truths were too important to delay, even for a honeymoon. I called the hotel where I knew they were staying for the night before their flight. Good evening. This is Robert Patterson. My son Marcus Patterson and his wife are guests in your hotel tonight, and I need to speak with them urgently. It's a family emergency. The desk clerk was initially reluctant to disturb guests so late at night, but when I explained that it was a matter of urgent family business that couldn't wait until morning, he agreed to ring their room. Marcus answered on the third ring, his voice groggy with sleep and concern. Dad, what's wrong? Is everything okay? Marcus, I need to speak with you and Sarah, in person. It's about something I discovered at the wedding, something you both need to know about. Dad, it's almost midnight. Can't this wait until we get back from our honeymoon? No, son, it can't wait. I'm coming to your hotel now. What's this about? I looked at the envelope and its contents, spread across the hotel room table like evidence in a criminal case. It's about Claudia Martinez, and it's about the choice you're going to have to make about your marriage." The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long that I thought the call had dropped. When Marcus finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Dad, I can explain." "No explanations over the phone, Marcus. Get Sarah and meet me in the hotel lobby in 30 minutes. She deserves to hear this from both of us, and she deserves to hear it before you leave for Italy." "Dad, please, you don't understand the situation." "I understand it better than you think I do. 30 minutes, Marcus. Don't make me come knock on your door." I hung up the phone and gathered the contents of the envelope, putting them back in order for what was going to be the most difficult conversation of my life. In 30 minutes, I was going to have to sit across from my son and his new wife and deliver information that would probably end their marriage before it had even really begun. But as I looked at Tyler sleeping peacefully in the hotel bed, I knew I was making the right choice. Some secrets are too toxic to keep, and some lies are too destructive to enable. Sarah deserved to know who she had married, and Marcus needed to face the consequences of the choices he'd been making behind her back. The truth was going to hurt everyone involved, but it was still better than the alternative of letting Sarah build a life on a foundation of deception. At least, I hoped it was. The hotel lobby at midnight was eerily quiet, furnished with overstuffed chairs and dim lighting that made everything feel like a stage set for a drama no one wanted to perform. I sat in a corner chair with the envelope on the coffee table in front of me, rehearsing what I was going to say and trying to prepare myself for what was about to become the worst conversation of my life. Marcus appeared first, still in his wedding clothes, but with his bow tie undone and his shirt partially unbuttoned. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in the 30 minutes since our phone call, his face pale and his hands shaking slightly as he approached my chair. "Dad, before Sarah gets down here, you need to understand something. Whatever you think you know about Claudia, it's not what it looks like. Marcus, sit down. We'll wait for Sarah and then we'll discuss what it looks like." "No, Dad, you don't understand. If you tell Sarah about this tonight, you're going to destroy her life for no reason. Claudia is unstable. She's been stalking me, making up stories." "Son, sit down and stop talking. You're only making this worse for yourself." Marcus sank into the chair across from me, running his hands through his hair in a gesture I recognized from his childhood, whenever he'd been caught in a lie and was trying to figure out how to explain himself out of trouble. "How did you find out?" he asked quietly. "That doesn't matter right now. What matters is that Sarah is about to find out, and you need to decide how you want to handle this conversation." "There's nothing to handle. Dad, I swear to you, whatever Claudia told you or wrote or whatever, it's not the truth. She's been obsessed with me for months, ever since I told her I was getting married. She's been making up fantasies about some relationship that never existed." I looked at my son, this man I'd raised to value honesty and integrity, and felt a deep sadness that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with disappointment. "Marcus, I've seen the emails, I've seen the photographs, I've read your messages to her from 3 days ago, messages where you promised her that nothing would change between you after the wedding." The color drained from Marcus's face completely. What did you see?" "Everything. 18 months of correspondence, pictures from your bachelor party, plans for continuing your affair after your honeymoon, complaints about Sarah being high maintenance and your wedding being something you had to get through." Marcus put his head in his hands. "Dad, I can explain all of that." "Can you? Because I'd love to hear an explanation for how you could stand in front of 60 people today and promise to love and cherish Sarah while planning to betray her before you even left for your honeymoon." "It's complicated." "No, Marcus, it's not complicated. It's a choice. You chose to lie to Sarah, to lie to everyone who loves you, and to build your marriage on a foundation of deception." The elevator doors opened, and Sarah stepped into the lobby, wearing a hotel robe over what looked like silk pajamas, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, and her face creased with worry and confusion. "Robert? Marcus? What's going on?" Marcus said there was some kind of family emergency. I stood up as she approached, struck by how young and vulnerable she looked without her wedding makeup and elaborate dress. This was Sarah at her most unguarded, expecting to be comforted by her new family rather than devastated by them. "Sarah, sweetheart, please sit down. There's something you need to know, and I'm afraid it's going to be very difficult to hear." Sarah took the chair next to Marcus, reaching automatically for his hand in the gesture of a wife seeking comfort from her husband. Marcus pulled his hand away, the movement so subtle that Sarah probably didn't even notice it consciously, but I saw the confusion that flickered across her face. "What kind of emergency?" she asked. "Is someone hurt? Is it Tyler? I saw him at the wedding, but I thought Lisa couldn't make the trip." "Tyler is fine. He's asleep upstairs." "Sarah, this isn't about an accident or an illness. This is about something that happened before your wedding, something that's going to affect your marriage." "I don't understand." I picked up the envelope from the coffee table and held it out to her. "This was hidden under your table at the reception tonight. It's from a woman named Claudia Martinez. She wanted to make sure you knew the truth about Marcus before you left for your honeymoon. Sarah took the envelope with hands that were already beginning to tremble. What truth? Marcus, what is he talking about? Marcus was staring at the floor, unable to meet his wife's eyes. Sarah, before you read that, I need you to know that I love you. I married you today because I want to spend my life with you. Marcus, you're scaring me. What's in this envelope? Just read it, I said gently. And Sarah, I want you to know that your father-in-law is here to support you, no matter what you decide to do after you've read it. Sarah opened the envelope with the careful precision of someone who knew she was about to receive devastating news, but wasn't yet ready to accept it. She read Claudia's letter first, her face growing paler with each paragraph. Then she moved to the email printouts, her hands shaking more violently as she recognized Marcus's email address and saw the dates on the correspondence. When she got to the photographs, she made a sound I'd never heard from her before, a strangled gasp that was part sob and part cry of pain. She stared at the images for a long moment, then set them down on the coffee table and looked at Marcus with an expression of complete bewilderment. 18 months. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Marcus, you've been sleeping with someone else for 18 months? Sarah, I can explain. 18 months. That's almost our entire engagement. You've been cheating on me since 3 months after you proposed? It's not that simple. It looks pretty simple to me. Sarah picked up one of the photographs, a particularly explicit image of Marcus and Claudia in what was clearly a hotel bed. This is from last weekend, your bachelor party weekend, when you told me you were going fishing with Luke and the guys. Sarah, please let me explain what happened. What happened is that you've been living a double life. Sarah's voice was getting stronger, anger beginning to replace shock. What happened is that you stood up in front of my family today and promised to love and honor me while you were planning to continue screwing another woman. I wasn't planning to continue anything. Sarah, I ended it with Claudia weeks ago. I told her the wedding was going ahead and that we couldn't see each other anymore. Sarah held up one of the printed emails. This is from Tuesday, Marcus. 3 days ago. You're telling her here that nothing will change between you after the wedding, that you just need to get through the ceremony and honeymoon, and then things can go back to normal. Marcus looked at the email printout as if he'd never seen it before, but I could see the recognition in his eyes. That's not what I meant. What did you mean? Because it sounds like you meant exactly what you wrote. It sounds like you meant to keep her as your mistress, while I played the role of your unsuspecting wife. Sarah, I love you. I married you because I want to be with you. You married me because my career and my family's money make me a better choice for your future than Claudia could ever be. That's a direct quote from your girlfriend's letter, Marcus. Is that how you described your decision to her? Marcus was silent, which was answer enough. Sarah stood up abruptly, pacing to the lobby windows and staring out at the empty street. I can't process this right now. 12 hours ago, I was the happiest woman in the world. I thought I'd married the love of my life, and now I find out that my husband has been cheating on me for over a year, that he was planning to continue cheating on me, and that he described our wedding as something he had to get through. Sarah, please sit down and let's talk about this rationally. Rationally? Sarah spun around to face Marcus, and I could see tears streaming down her face. There's nothing rational about this, Marcus. There's nothing rational about building a marriage on lies. There's nothing rational about promising to love someone while you're actively betraying them. I made mistakes, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. Stop saying that. Sarah's voice echoed through the empty lobby. Stop telling me you love me when you clearly don't. People who love each other don't do this, Marcus. People who love each other don't lie and cheat and plan elaborate deceptions. I had been sitting quietly, letting them have this conversation without interference, but I could see that Marcus was getting desperate and Sarah was getting overwhelmed. It was time to step in. Sarah, I said gently, you don't have to make any decisions tonight. You don't have to figure out what this means for your marriage or your future right now, but you did need to know the truth before you left for Italy. Italy, Sarah laughed bitterly. Our romantic honeymoon. Marcus, were you planning to call her while we were in Tuscany? Were you going to find excuses to step away from our romantic dinners so you could text your mistress? Sarah, I wasn't. Don't lie to me anymore. The words came out as a shout. Please, Marcus, if you have any respect left for me at all, don't lie to me anymore tonight. Marcus was crying now, tears streaming down his face as he looked at his wife of 12 hours. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I never meant to hurt you. But you did mean for it to happen. You made a choice over and over again for 18 months. You chose to see her, to sleep with her, to lie to me, to plan our wedding while planning to continue your affair. Those weren't accidents, Marcus. Those were decisions. What do you want me to say? What can I possibly say that would make this better? Nothing. Sarah said quietly. There's nothing you can say that would make this better. The only thing that could have made this better would have been for you to tell me the truth 18 months ago, or 12 months ago, or even 3 days ago, but you didn't do that. You chose to let me marry you while believing a lie. She turned to me and I saw something in her expression that broke my heart. Robert, thank you for telling me. I know this must have been incredibly difficult for you. Sarah, you're my daughter now. You deserve to know the truth. I need to go upstairs and think. I need to figure out what I'm going to do now. She looked at Marcus one more time. Don't follow me. I can't look at you right now. Sarah walked to the elevator without another word, leaving Marcus and me alone in the lobby with the evidence of his betrayal scattered across the coffee table. Dad, Marcus said after the elevator doors closed, what have I done? You've destroyed your marriage, son. And you've broken the heart of the best woman you'll probably ever meet. Can I fix this? Is there any way to fix this? I looked at my son. This man who had just learned that actions have consequences and that some mistakes can't be undone with apologies and explanations. I don't know, Marcus. That's not up to me and it's not up to you. It's up to Sarah. And right now, I think you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that the answer might be no. I love her, Dad. If I really do love her, then you should have acted like it. Love isn't just a feeling, Marcus. It's a choice you make every day. And for 18 months, you chose someone else. Marcus gathered up the photographs and emails, staring at them as if seeing them for the first time. How did this get to the wedding? How did Claudia know where to put this? That doesn't matter now. What matters is what you're going to do next. What am I supposed to do? My wife can barely look at me. I've humiliated her in front of both our families, and I've probably destroyed any chance of happiness we might have had together. You're going to give her space. You're going to respect whatever decision she makes about your marriage. And you're going to start thinking about the man you want to be going forward, because the man you've been for the past 18 months isn't someone any of us can be proud of. I stood up and started walking toward the elevator, leaving Marcus sitting alone with the wreckage of his choices. Dad, he called after me, are you disappointed in me? I paused at the elevator doors and turned back to look at my son. Marcus, I'm heartbroken for you. I'm heartbroken for Sarah. And yes, I'm deeply disappointed in the choices you've made. But you're still my son, and I still love you. The question is whether that's going to be enough to help you become the man you should have been all along. The elevator doors closed between us, and I rode up to my room where Tyler was still sleeping peacefully, unaware that the adult world he'd helped expose was even messier and more painful than he probably imagined. Tomorrow, Sarah would have to decide whether her marriage was worth saving or whether some betrayals were too deep to forgive. Marcus would have to face the consequences of 18 months of deception and lies, and I would have to figure out how to help my family heal from wounds that might never fully close. But tonight, at least, the truth was finally out in the open where it belonged. I woke up the next morning to find Tyler sitting by the hotel room window, still in his pajamas, watching the parking lot with the kind of intense concentration that suggested he'd been awake for a while. Good morning, buddy. How long have you been up? Since 6, he said without turning around. I heard Uncle Marcus's car leave about an hour ago. I joined Tyler at the window and looked down at the parking lot, noting the absence of the decorated car that had carried the newlyweds away from their reception just 12 hours earlier. Did you see which direction he went? Toward the airport. But Grandpa, Aunt Sarah didn't go with him. My heart sank. How do you know that? Because she's downstairs in the restaurant. I saw her when I went to get ice from the machine. She looked really sad. I got dressed quickly and made my way to the hotel restaurant, leaving Tyler with instructions to order room service breakfast and start packing his things for our flight back to Portland that afternoon. As Tyler had reported, Sarah was sitting alone at a corner table, still wearing the hotel robe over her pajamas, staring at a cup of coffee that looked like it had been sitting untouched for quite some time. Sarah, may I join you? She looked up at me with eyes that were red from crying and rimmed with exhaustion. Of course, I was hoping I'd see you before you left. I sat down across from her and signaled the waitress for coffee. Tyler said Marcus left for the airport. He wanted to cancel the honeymoon to stay here and work things out. Sarah made air quotes around the phrase, her voice heavy with sarcasm. I told him that if he cancelled the trip, he'd have to pay a penalty fee, and that seemed like a waste of money on top of everything else he'd wasted. So he went to Italy alone? He went to Italy alone. I told him I needed time to think, time to figure out what I wanted to do next, and that I couldn't do that with him hovering around trying to convince me to forgive him. And what are you thinking so far? Sarah was quiet for a long moment, turning her coffee cup in slow circles on the table. I keep trying to understand how I could have been so blind. 18 months, Robert. How do you miss the signs that your fiancé is cheating on you for 18 months? Sarah, this isn't your fault. Marcus was deliberately deceiving you. He was lying to you every single day and he'd gotten very good at it. But there had to have been signs. Late nights at work, unexplained absences, phone calls he took in private. I trusted him completely. I never questioned anything because I never imagined he was capable of this level of deception. That trust wasn't a weakness, sweetheart. That trust was what made you a good partner. Marcus took advantage of your love for him, and that's on him, not on you. Sarah pulled her robe tighter around herself. I called my parents this morning, told them the wedding was off, that Marcus and I were getting divorced. How did they take the news? About as well as you'd expect. Mum cried. Dad wanted to fly here immediately to handle the situation, whatever that means. I convinced them to stay in California until I figure out what I'm doing next. What are you thinking about doing next? Honestly, I have no idea. I know I can't stay married to Marcus, that much is clear, but everything else is just chaos. We have a shared apartment lease, joint bank accounts, wedding gifts to return. I have to figure out how to untangle an entire life that I built around someone who turned out to be a stranger. You don't have to figure all of that out today, Sarah. No, but I have to figure out where I'm going to live. I can't go back to our apartment, Robert. I can't sleep in the bed where he was probably texting his mistress while I was lying next to him. I thought about Helen, about how she would have handled this situation if it had been one of our children who needed help. Helen would have offered practical support first, emotional support second, and judgment never. Sarah, I have a proposition for you. My house is too big for just me, and it sounds like you need a place to stay while you sort things out. Why don't you come stay with me for a while? We can get you settled, and you can take as much time as you need to figure out your next steps. Robert, I couldn't impose on you like that. You're Marcus's father. This whole situation must be incredibly difficult for you too. You're not imposing. You're family. And right now you need family more than you need to worry about the complicated dynamics of who's related to whom. Sarah started crying again, but this time it seemed like relief rather than devastation. Thank you. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't told me the truth last night. You would have found out eventually. Lies this big have a way of coming to light, usually when they can do the most damage. At least this way you found out before you spent years building a life on false foundations. Do you think Marcus would have really continued the affair after we were married? I thought about the emails I'd seen, about the promises Marcus had made to Claudia, and the casual way he'd dismissed Sarah's feelings in his correspondence with his mistress. Yes, I said honestly, I think he would have continued it until he got caught or until he got bored. Sarah, I don't think Marcus ever intended to be faithful to you. I think he saw marriage as a business arrangement that would give him social status and financial security, while allowing him to continue doing whatever he wanted on the side. How did I not see that? How did I convince myself I was marrying someone who loved me when he clearly saw me as a convenience? Because you loved him, and when you love someone, you assume they love you back the same way. You couldn't imagine the level of selfishness and deception it takes to maintain a double life for 18 months because you're not capable of that kind of cruelty yourself. Sarah wiped her eyes with her napkin. I keep thinking about yesterday morning. I was so happy, Robert. I was getting ready for what I thought was going to be the best day of my life, and all I could think about was how lucky I was to have found Marcus. And now you know the truth, which is painful, but it's also liberating. Sarah, you're 32 years old, you're brilliant, you're kind, and you have a successful career that you built entirely on your own. This betrayal doesn't diminish any of those things, and it doesn't mean you won't find real love with someone who deserves you. I don't think I can trust anyone again after this. If Marcus could fool me so completely, how will I ever know if someone else is telling me the truth? Because not everyone is Marcus. Most people, when they say they love you, actually mean it. Most people don't have the capacity for the kind of sustained deception your husband was engaging in. Ex-husband, Sarah corrected. I can't think of him as my husband anymore. We were married for less than 24 hours, and most of that time he was lying to me. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, Sarah processing her new reality, while I tried to figure out how to help her navigate the difficult weeks ahead. Finally, she looked up at me with something that might have been determination. Robert, can I ask you something? Anything. Are you disappointed in Marcus? As his father, are you ashamed of what he's done? I considered the question carefully. Was I disappointed, ashamed, heartbroken, all of the above? I'm devastated, I said finally. I'm devastated that my son is capable of hurting someone the way he's hurt you. I'm devastated that he could lie so easily and for so long. And I'm devastated that he chose to build his happiness on the destruction of yours. But you still love him. I do. But loving someone doesn't mean enabling their worst behavior or protecting them from the consequences of their choices. Marcus made these decisions and now he has to live with the results. What do you think will happen when he comes back from Italy? I think he'll try to convince you to give him another chance. He'll probably go to counseling, make promises about changing, tell you that Claudia meant nothing to him and you're the only one he's ever really loved. And what should I do when that happens? Whatever feels right to you. But Sarah, I want you to remember that people don't change unless they have a compelling reason to change, and Marcus has spent 18 months proving that he doesn't consider your feelings to be a compelling reason for anything. Sarah nodded slowly. I think I already know what I'm going to do. I just need to work up the courage to do it. What's that? I'm going to file for divorce as soon as I get back home. I'm going to move out of our apartment, close our joint accounts, and start over completely. I can't build a marriage with someone who sees commitment as optional. That sounds like a very wise decision. And Robert, I want you to know that none of this changes how I feel about you. You're the father I never had, and you saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life by staying married to someone who didn't respect me enough to be faithful. 2 days later, I was back home in my empty house, helping Sarah get settled in the guest room that had once been Marcus's childhood bedroom. Tyler had flown back to Portland with stories that he'd promised his mother he would never tell anyone else, and I was left to figure out how to maintain relationships with both my son and my former daughter-in-law while they navigated the end of their marriage. Marcus called from Italy on the 3rd day of his solo honeymoon, his voice slurred with wine and desperation. Dad, is Sarah staying with you? She's not answering her phone, and I need to talk to her. Sarah is where she needs to be, and she's not answering her phone because she doesn't want to talk to you. Dad, I made a mistake. I made a terrible mistake, but that doesn't mean our marriage has to be over. People get past infidelity all the time. Do they, Marcus? Do people get past 18 months of systematic deception and lies? Yes, they do. If they love each other enough, they can get past anything. But Marcus, that's the problem. Sarah loved you enough to get past anything, but you didn't love her enough to avoid betraying her in the first place. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. What's that supposed to mean? It means that love isn't just a feeling you have when it's convenient. Love is a choice you make every day. And for 18 months you chose someone else. You chose to lie to Sarah, to deceive her, to plan a future with her while maintaining a relationship with another woman. Those weren't mistakes, son. Those were deliberate choices that showed Sarah exactly how much she meant to you. That's not fair, Dad. People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake, Marcus. A mistake is something that happens once, in a moment of weakness, and that you immediately regret and confess. What you did was build an entire second life behind Sarah's back and then lie to her face every single day for over a year. So you think I should just give up? You think I should just let my marriage end? I think your marriage ended the first time you slept with Claudia. Everything that happened after that was just Sarah living in a fantasy that you helped her maintain. Dad, whose side are you on here? The question caught me off guard because I hadn't thought about this situation in terms of sides, but as I considered it, I realized that there were sides, and I had indeed chosen one. I'm on the side of honesty, Marcus. I'm on the side of treating people with respect and dignity. I'm on the side of keeping your promises and being faithful to the people who trust you. And right now, that puts me on Sarah's side. Marcus hung up without saying goodbye, and I didn't hear from him again for 3 weeks. When he finally came back from Italy, tan and miserable, and apparently hoping that time and distance had softened Sarah's resolve, he found that she had indeed filed for divorce, and had started the process of completely separating their lives. She'd moved out of their shared apartment, closed their joint bank accounts, and begun the process of annulling their marriage on the grounds of fraud. She's claiming fraud? Marcus asked when he showed up at my house unannounced, looking for Sarah and finding only me. She married you under the assumption that you were faithful and honest. Since you were neither of those things, yes, I'd say fraud is an accurate description. Dad, I need your help. I need you to talk to Sarah to convince her to give us another chance. No. What do you mean, no? I mean, no, I won't help you manipulate Sarah into staying in a marriage built on lies. I won't help you convince her to ignore 18 months of betrayal because you've finally realized what you've lost. She's my wife. No, Marcus. She was your wife for less than 24 hours, and you spent most of that time deceiving her. She's not your wife anymore. She's the woman whose life you tried to destroy with your selfishness. That conversation was 6 months ago. Sarah's annulment was granted, and she's since moved across the country to take a position at a children's hospital in Denver, where she's building a new life, free from the wreckage of her brief marriage to my son. We stay in touch through email and occasional phone calls. She's dating someone new, a fellow doctor who apparently treats her with the respect and honesty she always deserved. She sounds happy in a way that I don't think she ever really was with Marcus, even before she knew about his affair. Marcus, meanwhile, has struggled to rebuild his life after losing everything that mattered to him. His business suffered when word of his behavior spread through our small professional community. Several of his longtime clients decided they couldn't trust someone who had so thoroughly deceived his own wife. He's had to start over professionally and personally, and as far as I know, he's been unsuccessful at both. He calls me occasionally, usually when he's been drinking, to ask if I think Sarah will ever forgive him or if there's any chance they might reconcile someday. The answer is always the same: no, and she shouldn't. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive. Some lies are too fundamental to overlook. And some people, when they show you who they really are, should be believed the first time. Tyler, now 11, still asks about Aunt Sarah when we talk on the phone, and I tell him that she's doing well and that she's grateful he was brave enough to deliver that envelope. He's old enough now to understand something about what happened that night at the wedding, though I've tried to shield him from the more sordid details. "Grandpa," he asked me during our last conversation, "do you think Uncle Marcus is sorry about what he did?" "I think he's sorry he got caught, Bertie. I think he's sorry about the consequences, but I don't think he's sorry about the choices he made, because if he was truly sorry about those, he would have stopped making them long before that envelope showed up at his wedding." "Do you still love him?" "Yes, I do. But loving someone doesn't mean pretending they're a better person than they've shown themselves to be. It's a hard lesson for an 11-year-old to understand. But then again, it was a hard lesson for a 62-year-old to learn too. Sometimes the people we love most are capable of disappointing us most deeply. Sometimes family loyalty means protecting the victims rather than enabling the perpetrators. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their choices, even when those consequences include losing everything they thought they valued. The truth, as I told Sarah that morning in the hotel restaurant, has a way of coming to light eventually. I'm just grateful that in this case it came to light soon enough to save her from years of living a lie. Even if it was too late to save the son I thought I'd raised from becoming